We got two more on the docket. Who do we have coming up next?
Mr. Will
Cleveland.
Thanks, Casey. Thanks, Cody. This is called The Career Comedian in Today's Entertainment Industry. Disclaimer, take this advice if you want. These are merely observations that I've made that are meant solely as motivation for me and may not be for everybody. Michael Delaney said in my last sketch class at UCB, a good sketch is like a good song. It has an intro that sets the tone, a good memorable hook, and a bridge to rest the funny before it punches home to the end. I think he's exactly right, not only in the parallels of a song and a sketch, but in the parallels of music and comedy industries as a whole. We as comedians need to think less of ourselves as funny people who deserve a shot, but as artists in an industry full of people that needs the public to pay attention because we have something that we need to say. We frame our careers the same way musicians do. We train at our craft by going to jams and open mics. We form bands with improv teams and sketch teams. We put on shows in venues. We promote those shows. We make t-shirts. We make short 2-minute videos. MTV, anyone? We make recordings in venues and homemade studios. Comedy has mirrored the music industry for a long time. I'm not saying that it's a new thing. The first comedy record was produced and sold as far back as 1895. A recording by Cal Stewart, a vaudevillian and friend of Mark Twain and Will Rogers, reciting comedic stories, was among the first comedy albums ever recorded and sold. Also, comedians were just as relevant to a nightclub's entertainment as big bands throughout most of the 20th century. Throughout the latter third of the 20th century, however, the music industry and comedy made a split when comedy clubs and music venues became separated in the 80s, and the term MC took a whole other meaning. MTV, anyone? Comedians did okay, though, right? A few of them. According to Fortune magazine, Jerry Seinfeld was paid roughly $13,000 per line in the series Seinfeld. $13,000 per line. Roseanne, Brett Butler, Ray Romano were also among the stand-up comedians to make the jump from the mic to headlining their own sitcom. And then came cable and internet, and gone are the days of getting your tight five on the Late Show and being catapulted into sitcom superstardom. Nobody wants to pay for music anymore either. So the record industry has taken a big hit as well. More so than comedy, I think, because there were far fewer comedians getting sitcoms than musicians getting record deals. So the internet has redistributed the wealth, you might say, in the industry, though you're probably not going to make tens of millions of dollars starring in a sitcom. You're more accessible to a wider audience through Twitter, YouTube, blogs. Much like the modern musician isn't making millions of dollars in record sales, we as comedians need to find other ways to generate income. The above mentioned may not sound like a great thing, but trust me, it's great for the art. There are no more gatekeepers to keep you from your audience. And who is your audience? I think we can explore that. I think we can explore it through something you hear comedians talking about all the time, and that's their comedic voice. So how do we equate finding our comedic voice to the music biz? I think we can explore it through musical genres. It's harder for the comedian to find his or her audience than it is a musician. Much of the musician's work in finding an audience has been done through the genre of music they play. So people know what they like to listen to, rock, pop, punk, hip-hop. Genres aren't as clearly established in comedy as they are in music. You can call improv jazz, but jazz isn't mainstream. And that's what most comedians, I think, are trying to be. What is your comedy genre? And I'm not talking about sketch versus stand-up. We need to break it down even more. Are you a raunchy blue comic? Do you do characters? Are you a long-form storyteller? Are you strictly a joke deliverer? And what about your sketch genre? Is it parody? Is it political? Do you do observational lists? You hear career comedians talking all the time about finding their voice. Sometimes the stand-up comic is looking for his character. So try thinking of your comedic voice in the term of a genre of music, one that will let your audience find you. Okay, speaking from personal experience, I know the importance of finding your comedic voice through my old sketch team at Upright Citizens Brigade. I was on a UCB video team from 2011 to 2013 with a group of writers, directors, and producers. One of the first things we talked about in our first meeting was finding our voice, which we all thought was really important. Now, this was a room full of writers and directors who are good. I mean, they're really good. They've gone on to work at Adult Swim, Louie, Late Night with Seth Meyers, Broad City, Saturday Night Live, and Cold Town Theater. We wanted to find our voice as a sketch team, but we ended up being a room full of very different voices. That made us into a genre team. We put out video after video that was completely different from the last. It was a great education in video production, but I don't think we were able to build an audience outside of the general UCB audience. So if you're a young comedian and you're listening to this and you've established your voice, it's taken you a long time to do that. You've trained in improv or sketch or both. You've been doing open mics. You're ready to be a career comedian. So what next? Again, you're an artist, so we'll put this into the perspective of a musician. So there are a number of things that musicians do that we as comedians should also be doing. Number one, musicians gig. Most of these are freebies starting out, but if you keep doing them, act professionally, you start to see, I don't know, maybe $20 at the end of the night, just for showing up and doing your set. Keep doing them and acting professionally, and you get hosting gigs, opening gigs, featured gigs, and eventually headlining gigs. The key is to keep showing up and acting professionally. If you act like a professional, you'll be treated like a professional, and professionals get paid. If you haven't gigged, then you should get into the festival circuit. Living in Austin, you have literally no excuse not to submit to a festival. South by Southwest, Moon Tower, Sketchfest, Out of Bounds, Fun, 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 the Funniest Person in Austin contest. Am I missing one? Betty Fest. These things happen all the time. We are a festival city. So that's what happens. You get a few credits to your name. You bill a few credits to your name. And then the more professional you become when you're gigging. And if you can't gig in your city, you need to draw the 100-mile radius around your hometown, which leads me to the next thing that they do. They tour. Road comics have been around forever, so this is nothing new. As a young comedian, you have to know that nobody is going to pluck you out of your city and put you out on the road. You have to make it a full-time job to get gigs on the road. This is really tough at first and doesn't pay enough to cover the travel expenses, but don't think for a second it's any easier for a musician. And you don't have to be a stand-up to do this. Get your improv, get your sketch, get your variety show, act out there on the road too. If anybody tells you that this is not how it's done, don't trust them because they have no idea how things are done anymore. The landscape has changed too much too quickly for any of us to know. It's up to you to decide what is going to work. Chris Gethard is in the second week of production of The Chris Gethard Show on Fusion Network, and he is reinventing late-night television. He started his show on the stage at UCB and then was on cable access for several years before getting a pilot ordered by Comedy Central that ultimately ended up going to Fusion Network as a series. This took Chris, who is a genius, mind you, 7 or 8 years to get a show from the stage onto cable television. Not to mention the 8 to 10 years before that Chris was training to become a great comedian. What I'm saying is it takes a lot of time to achieve your bigger goals, so start small. The Beatles sucked at making music when they were kids. They were just okay when they started out as a band. They didn't get good until Helter Skelter, and they got murdered everywhere. Okay, number 3, musicians make records, right? That's easy. But this is one of the bigger goals you should have. If you're a stand-up and you've been doing open mics for the last 5 years, you should be prepping your 40 minutes to make a record this year. If you're a sketch writer, you should be prepping a 20-minute podcast. If you only do improv, you should be exploring the endless array of ideas on how to record an improvised show. Number 4, musicians sell their own merchandise. If you're on the road, this will put more funds in the coffers. In 2011, Louis C.K. produced a comedy special and sold it on his website via PayPal. It's something we don't really think about now, but it sort of gave us permission as artists to not have to wait on some network or label to tell us it's okay to start making money. Granted, Louis had the money to produce his own special, but what you sell is up to you. You just have to make it you by putting your own twist on it. T-shirts and CDs, sure, but sell whatever the hell you want as long as you made it. A friend of mine is a comedian who makes song mashup albums, and he's really good at it. He wanted to sell his product at comedy shows. It's not his material, but it was something he spent a lot of hours producing. What he decided to do was to put his album on thumb drives, on a thumb drive, glue little model trees to them, and wrap them in plastic baggies like dime bags of weed. That way he wasn't selling the copyrighted material, but a memory stick that he had made his own and was able to sell in a fun and memorable way. Okay, moving on. Number 5. Musicians license their music for commercials. All right, this is slightly different. We as career comedians aren't likely to have our 3-minute bit being used as a soundtrack to sell Tide. But that doesn't stop us from doing commercial work as actors. Ad agencies and production companies are constantly looking for comedians for their ad spots. They want somebody who looks relatable with improv chops to keep the dialogue fresh and realistic. This one doesn't happen overnight, and the jobs are few and far between. So don't quit your day job. I'm not saying that in that condescending tone that you aren't good. Just don't quit your day job because you need one. Submit your stuff to agencies, talent agencies. You don't have to have a reel to do it, so get on that. Just get a resume and headshot together and submit it. Okay, number 6, they have a YouTube channel. Vine, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Periscope, these are all good mediums for you to be funny and find your audience. But YouTube is the only one that pays you to do it. The figures are very, very small, but we got to start somewhere. Try not to think about your YouTube channel as a way to get your TV show in front of people. You know, the TV show that you make. Think of your YouTube channel as just an extension of your art and your voice as a comedian. Make it 100% you. Make it your genre of comedy. Okay, 7, last one. Move to LA. This part's hard. I'm not saying that you have to move to LA to be an artist and to be good at what you do and to be happy. I'm just saying that LA is where the jobs are. You may be thinking, but I want to move to New York. Good. You should go to New York for 4 or 5 years and then move to LA. Eventually, the career comedian will end up moving to LA. The good news about moving to New York is there is very healthy competition for stage time that forces you to get really good and keep getting good. The better you are, the better your odds for success are in LA. All right, to sum things up, if you're a young comedian just starting out, it's important for you to find and hone your voice or find a genre of comedy that your audience will be easily guided to. So, on that note, you might be thinking, but what if my comedic voice or genre is music? Should I find a genre within music that is my comedy voice? Not exactly. I guarantee you that the same people who like Weird Al also like Tenacious D and Flight of the Conchords. Another thing you might be thinking is, my brand or comedy voice doesn't fit into any genre, so what am I supposed to do? Well, congratulations. You've created your own. You're Jim Henson. You're Tim and Eric. You're Chris Gethard. And I don't want you to feel like you have to predetermine your style of comedy. If you're a career comedian, chances are that you had very little choice in the matter. So it's important that you go out and just exist on stage as you and do the things that make you laugh. If you keep doing that, your voice or genre will present itself. It will work and continue to work to please the audience. Thank you.